So the Rugby Championship is only 7 days away, and in this video, I'm going to be giving my Springboks Starting XV that I would absolutely love to see for this Rugby Championship competition. First game for the Springboks up against the Australians. Going to be an awesome matchup, and you'll want to be able to set that bar nice and high early on. And with a side like the one that I've put together here, I think that they could do very well in the Rugby Championship. Now, I should mention there are a couple controversial choices that I've made in this lineup, but I do think they would work, so hopefully the Springboks consider it in the future as well. But we will start with the front row. No real controversy here. Just going stock standard. Number 1, Oxnishare. Number 2, Bongyombanambi. Number 3, Frans Malherbe. The same three that they went with up against the Irish. Oxnishare, an absolute beast in that front row. Bongyombanambi, once again, you could switch him with Malcolm Marx and have the other coming off the bench, but I believe Umbanambi is the better option for starting, and then have that Malcolm Marx impact making his way off the bench. And then Frans Malherbe, the man's Frans Malherbe. You don't really have to say too much more. He's an absolute tank of a fellow in the front row, scrummaging on point, and definitely something that the Springboks could use to their advantage throughout the Rugby Championship. Now in the locking duo, this is where I've got a bit of a change compared to what we would normally see due to the injury of Franco Mostert. He will not be available for this Rugby Championship. So number 4, I have stuck with Eben Etzebeth, and number 5, this is where I've gone with RG Snyman. Now that could be an option that they don't consider. Maybe they want Snyman as that impact player, making his way off the bench. But I just feel whether he's in the starting lineup or off the bench, he's going to have that impact anyway. So you might as well get him on the field early, get him out there alongside Etzebeth, because that is a very physical locking duo for the Springboks, and one that can definitely dominate lineouts, whether that is their own throw or getting the steals from their opposition. In the loose forward trio, I've gone with the captain, Siya Kolisi. At number 6, I believe that he will be playing a majority of minutes throughout this Rugby Championship. Rassi definitely going to be wanting to get his captain out there on the field as much as possible. These first 2 games up against Australia, of course, easing into it a little bit, and then those 2 massive matches up against the All Blacks in South Africa, which of course the Springboks would love to go 2 from 2 for those matches. Number 7, this is where I've gone with Peter Steph-Toy. Now, there were question marks of whether that man was actually going to be available for this Rugby Championship, but it seems like he is match fit, and he's going to be ready for week number 1, which is absolutely massive. It's great news for the Springboks. Not so great news for someone like a Ben Jason Dixon, who got that opportunity up against Portugal, had an overall pretty solid game, but now might struggle to get minutes with Peter Steph-Toy back in the talks. He is a brilliant player, a loose forward that any side would be happy to have, and the Springboks, they know what kind of impact that man can bring, which is why I think he would be a great 7 option. Number 8, this is a little bit more interesting, because you got a few horses in this number 8 race. You've got Kwagga Smith, who was getting starting minutes throughout the Irish series. You've got Evan Roos, who's on the cusp of maybe breaking into that starting lineup. We saw him be dominant up against the Portuguese. We saw up against the Welsh, getting those great running meters. His discipline's come a long way as well, so maybe he is one of those guys that gets a start. Or do they go with the tried and trusty in Kwagga Smith, with that experience, with that jackling ability? I think in terms of the starting lineup, the strongest that they could go with, I've actually put Evan Roos here. Mainly because you've got to look towards that future as well. And we all know what type of impact Kwagga Smith can have when he makes his way off the bench. All you got to do is watch that last Rugby World Cup. That man, every time he made his way on, he would get turnovers. He would put dominant tackles in. He was causing the opposition a huge amount of stress. And that is exactly what you want. Definitely with a nickname like the Bomb Squad, at the end of the day, you want to be pretty strong and you want to have that big impact, which I believe Kwagga Smith does bring. But now we move on to the back line. The number 9 for my Springboks XV, I've actually gone with Cobus Reinach. Now, some people would go with Grant Williams, and some maybe would even go with Morne van den Berg. The reason I've gone with Reinach, not just is because of the way that he plays a game of rugby, gets his side attacking. He also is extremely quick, which both of those other 2 individuals also fall into that category. But it's more so, I'm thinking about, once again, that bench. And your best bet, I believe, is to have Grant Williams as your number 22. because that way he covers halfback as well as the wing positions, which leaves you a lot more opportunity if you go with a 6-2 of going with a centre or maybe someone else who's quite versatile and fly half fullback, etc. So that is why I would go with Kobus Reinach in the starting lineup and have Grant Williams as the guy coming off the bench. But number 10, this is where we're getting controversial, ladies and gentlemen. I've gone with Mani Libbok here. Now this is my starting XV. As you've mentioned, this is not so much what I believe they will go with. Pollard, great player, don't get me wrong. And I feel like talking about that 10 jersey at the moment for the Springboks gets you in a lot of trouble because it seems to be quite a personal matter. Whether it's a Pollard number 10, a Mani Libbok number 10, a Sasha Feinberg Ungumezulu number 10, it just seems to be that no one's really on the same page. But Mani Libbok, I feel like one thing that is for certain is the fact that he is very strong on attack. But the other thing that lets him down at the moment anyway is that goal kicking. But the question is, do they have to have a kicking 10 for the Springboks? When we think back through history, Percy Montgomery, he wasn't the 10, but he was certainly the kicking option for them. Can they find somewhere else to put a kicker in that back line? And I believe with the lineup that I've gone with, the answer is yes. So I've gone with Mani Libbok as my number 10, but I could see them going with Pollard easily. If they want that stability and they want that kicking guarantee, that man certainly does offer just that. But now moving into the centres. Number 12, Damien de Allende. Number 13, Jesse Kriel. I feel like this one's not that challenging, definitely without Andre Esterhuizen in the running due to that suspension that he received for the red card up against the Portuguese. It meant that he was not going to be in the squad, or at least not for the start of the Rugby Championship. Jesse Kriel, he is in absolutely phenomenal form. The fact that Lukanyo, as strong of a player as he is, he just doesn't really get mentioned for that number 13 jersey as much as he used to. And that is because Jesse Kriel is in some of the best form that he has ever been in. So I would definitely say that that is a strong centre pairing that the Springboks could go with. And when those two take to the field, it's not very often that the opposition has a stronger pairing than those two Springbok centres. But now we move on to the back three. Number 11, this is where I've gone with Makazole Mapimpi. Now it is extremely challenging to pick a back three at the moment for the Springboks because they have so much depth. They have got players returning from injury such as Kane Moody, which at the moment I don't even know where they can play him with how many other players are fighting for those same jerseys. You've got Cheslin Colby, you've got Kurtley Arendse, you have got Makazole Mapimpi like I mentioned. So I've gone with Mapimpi here. He's got a lot of minutes in that number 11 jersey. He is still scoring tries, so that is great news for the Springboks, but I could easily see them putting Kurtley Arendse out on that wing and perhaps having someone else out on the right wing side. But on the right wing, this is where I have got Kurtley Arendse for that number 14 jersey. He has one of the best try-scoring per-match ratios out of any player in international rugby at the moment. He has scored time and time again in important moments for the Springboks, and I don't think this Rugby Championship will be any different. I could see him getting 3 or 4, maybe even 5 tries throughout the competition. That is how good he is. And if this whole Springbok backline fires like he does, they're going to be an extremely tough side to beat for 2024. And then at number 15, this is actually where I've gone with Sasha Feinberg Ungumezulu. Now, the reason I've gone with this is Willie Leroux, as strong as he is playing at the moment, he is 34 years old. And he is getting towards that stage of his career that I don't think he's going to make it to that next Rugby World Cup. And the Springboks, they've talked heavily about trying to build towards that 2027 Rugby World Cup in Australia. With the fact that Willie Leroux probably won't be at 15, maybe now is the time to start putting in those young guys. We saw Sasha Feinberg Ungumezulu go 78 minutes up against the Irish in the second test match, and he was one of the stars on the field for the South Africans. He's got a ton of talent. He also offers you that goal kicking, which is why I've still got Mani Libbok as the number 10. If Ungumezulu is at number 15, that's your goal kicking problem sorted, and then Mani Libbok can fully concentrate on being that attacking fly half and one of the most dangerous playmakers in World Rugby. If he can just take that weight of kicking the goals off his shoulders, I feel like that will show a lot more confidence in the way that he is able to play. But Sasha Feinberg, Zulu, if it's not now, it will certainly be soon. I don't think that man can be denied a starting spot for the Springboks for pretty much any longer, with just how strong he's been in the short times that we've seen him. But that is my Springboks Starting XV, ladies and gentlemen, that I would love to see throughout the Rugby Championship. Now, I should clarify, I don't want to see this for every single game because, of course, those players would get extremely tired. But also, for the Springboks, you want to get that whole squad playing throughout this competition. This is just what I believe would be the strongest lineup that they could go with throughout the comp, and that could easily be debated. You could say that maybe a different 9 would be an option. You could say maybe Quagga Smith rather than Royce. You could say Makazole Mapimpi maybe gets taken out of that side, and you bring in the youngster Moody and Arinsa as the 2 wingers, and perhaps maybe Vili LaRue keeps that spot at 15 for just a bit longer. But do let me know your Springboks Starting XV that you would love to see throughout the Rugby Championship. We are going to be letting you guys know the Springboks lineups for every single match, as well as our predictions for what we think Rassie Erasmus will be going with throughout the competition. So if you are new, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you all for the next one.